Hello, this is Scott Chacon, and this is using Git to manage and deploy Rails screencast. And I'll be showing you how to use Git and the new Git SCM module for Capistrano 2.1 that was just released to manage and deploy your Rails projects. So to begin with, I've set up 3 servers. The first one here is my local server. This one right here is my web server. And I'm showing you that I have Git and Ruby installed on it. I also have Nginx installed on it. And my last one is my Git server. Now, for those of you who are unfamiliar with Git, I'll show you real quickly how to get and to compile Git. If you Google for Git and you go to the first website there and copy the URL, the source code is at kernel.org, and you can get it and compile it relatively easily. This should compile on, you can use apt-get with or yum install with some of the newer distributions, but it'll get 1.4. If you would like to get 1.5, it's easiest to just get the source off the website and build it. I believe that the newest Mac 10.5 will also compile it if you have the developer tools installed. And then it's just make all and make install, and you pretty much can get Git working that quickly. So here is the version, and it's 1.5.3.4 is the newest one. Okay, so now what we're going to do is we're going to create a new Rails app, and we're going to add it to Git. So here I've done Rails note taker. We'll just call the app note taker. And to initialize our Git repository, we run git initdb. And now we can see that it's created a .git directory. And it doesn't do one per subdirectory like Subversion does. It just does this one. And we're going to start a new git ignore file and put all the files in here that we don't want Git to put into the repository. And now we do git add dot, and that will, if we run git status, we can see everything that it put into the index file, into the repository. And in order to commit that, we run git commit -a. That automatically adds everything. And we'll just put a little initial commit message and git status, and you see that there's nothing to commit anymore. So now all of those files are in our Git repository. So now we're going to do some Rails stuff. So let's generate a model called note to put into our note taker application. And we'll just go ahead and edit that migration, and we'll add a couple of fields here. Oops, we'll do mcall, and we'll add a name field, and it'll be a string, and we'll add a body for the note. So note body, and we'll make it a text field, text area. And now we're gonna migrate this database. So actually, first I have to make sure that it can connect to a database. So let's change this. Our database.yaml file. Actually, it's test pwd, and the host will be localhost. And we'll copy this information to the test area as well. Okay, so now we can run that migration. Rake db migrate. Actually, I already have a database set up for that, so I'll just go ahead and create a new database. I had an existing database from when I was running through this before, so we'll do a new one. We'll call it notetaker_d, and we'll go back here to our database.yaml file, and we'll change this to _d. So create your database, migrate, and there we go. Okay, so now we have our database, we have our model, so now we need to generate scaffolding for the note object, and we can run our server. I have one running on 3000 here, so we'll do it 3001, and there's our server, so let's see if it works. Localhost 3001. There you go. So now we'll remove the index file so we can see our scaffolding, and we'll change our routes here. Make this a little simpler. And we'll connect our default to our new notes controller. Let's try that out. Okay, so now we have our scaffolding. So here's our new Rails app, and it's checked into Git, and it's working. Okay, so now we're going to create an external Git repository, which means cloning our local Git repository and copying it over to another server, in this case our Git server. So first I'm going to add all the files that we created by creating the scaffolding, and we're going to go ahead and take a look at Git status, and they're all there, and commit that into our Git repo, into our local one. And then once that's done, you can see there's nothing left to commit. So I'm going to go up one directory, and I'm going to do git clone --bear the local Git repository, and create a new Git repository that's just a clone of it. And now you can see it right next to our directory there. And all I have to do to create an external Git repository is take that clone and copy it, SEP it over to our Git server. And I'm going to put it in opt repos notetaker.git. And this is all done over SSH, and since I've already copied the public keys over, I don't have to type in a password. And so on the Git server, now you can see it, the notetaker.git repository there. And if we export gitdir as a local directory, since we're here and we run git log, we can do any of our git commands on this thing, and there you can see our latest commit that we just did. So now we have an exported Git repository, and we want to add that repository. Even though we cloned this one and moved it over there, we want to add this as a remote, as a Git remote. So all you have to do is git remote add, and then the string you want to use to refer to it in the future, and then the URI for where that repository is. And we're not in the directory, so we'll go back to the actual directory where our Git repository is and run that line again, and this time it works. And so now if we look in our git config, you can see that it added the remote line there, and now if we do git fetch git server, it's going ahead and it's going to get all the branches from that remote repository. And now you can see that it went and it got the latest branch from that git ref. And that's the branch. So now we have our git remote. Okay, so now let's set up Capistrano. So we're going to go ahead and run capify dot. That creates our initial Capistrano files, and then we'll edit our deploy.rb, and now we're going to set up everything for using Git instead of Subversion here. So we'll name our application. We're going to set up our Git repository that we just set up. Git server :opt repo notetaker.git. And we're going to set our domain to be web server, which is the server that our Rails app is running on. We're going to change the SCM to Git, and this will only work in Capistrano 2.1 or later, which is where that was introduced. And we're going to set our deploy via to remote cache. If we don't do that, then Git will by default check out. It'll clone the entire repository every time. So we want to keep a remote cache. It's a lot more. It's a lot quicker. And we're going to set our SSH options to paranoid false, set our user to mongrel, our runner to mongrel, since that's how I have it set up, and use sudo to false. And then we're going to change the roles to the domain that we just set up. And our database as well. And that's already set up as a web server. And then we're going to set up our mongrel configuration file in here so that when we move our mongrel Capistrano recipe over, it'll know where the configuration file is. So we're going to be keeping it in the config of the current path. Mongrel cluster. And then now we go back and we're going to copy our mongrel file over, and this file overwrites the default roles for start and stop and restart with mongrel based ones, since we're going to be using mongrel as our web server. I'll have that file on my website as well if anybody wants it, but I copied it from somebody else's. So, and then we're going to do a new task that's going to copy our configuration files from the shared directory into our main directory. And this way we can keep copies of the configuration files on the web server and just have them copy it into the config directory every time. So this is stuff like database.yaml, mongrel cluster.yaml, nginx.yaml, and such. So we're going to copy it from the shared path config to the release path config, and then we're going to put in an after hook. So after it runs deploy update code, we're going to have it run update config task that we just defined. Now, let's see what's in Git. So now we have 3 new files, so we're going to go ahead and add them. Actually, first we need to have our cap file load the mongrel file as well. And now you can do git add. There we go. We'll do a small message. for adding the Capistrano configuration files, and now we can push this new release to our Git server. And so now on our Git server, if we run git log, we can see added the Capistrano configs commit as on our Git server. So the push worked. Now we'll go back to our local and we'll see what tasks are available for us. And we're going to go ahead and run cap deploy setup to set up the server for deployment. And there you go. And then we're going to run cap deploy check to see if everything's there. And it thinks that it is. We can go onto our web server and verify this. And there's the shared directory and the releases. And everything looks good. Now, if we go back, we can go ahead and do a cold deploy. Actually, first we need to copy our configuration file, our initial configuration files, into the shared directory on the server there. So I have them set up already, and we'll just go ahead and copy them over to apps note taker shared. And then that after task that we set up will take these files and copy them into the local config directory every time that we do a deploy. And now we can see that the new configuration files are there. We can take a look at Mongo cluster, and it's going to do 2 from port 3000. And I have Nginx set up already to reverse proxy back to those 2 IP addresses. And our database information is there as well. So now let's try our deploy. So now it's going to go out there. And oh, we haven't, so we don't, I forgot to freeze my Rails gems. So now we can run rake freeze gems. And it's going to unpack those Rails gems into our vendor directory. We'll add those to Git. And we'll commit that when this is done. And we'll push it back out to our Git server. Froze Rails gems. And it's now in our local repository, so we'll push it back out to our Git server. And now those changes are on the Git server. So now we can run our cap deploy cold again, and our cap deploy, update the code, there's all the files there, and it's going to go ahead and start our web server. And now we can go to the server, we'll open up a new tab, go to our new server, and make sure that this worked, and there it is. And we can create a new note. Boom. And we're good. Okay, so now let's try to make a change and redeploy using this setup. So go to TextMate here. We'll make a small change to our list page. Instead of the default listing notes that we can see on the web server here, we'll change it to my notes. And if we run git status, we can see that that file's been changed. We can run commit-a and change of wording. And that commits it locally, and we can push it out to our Git server. And there we go. And now all we should have to run is cap deploy. The remote cache will do an update and copy it over and good to go. Alright, so now let's do some fun with Git. We're going to create a new branch. So if you do branch-a, you can see our branches, our local one's master, and you can also see the remote branches. So on our Git server, we can see our master branch there. We'll create a new branch and work in that for a minute. Git checkout-b will create a new branch and switch to it. So if we run git branch again, we can see that we're on the testing branch now, and there's a new branch. And we can look at this with gitk. Gitk is a graphical version of the Git repository here, so we can see that all three of our branches are at the same point right now. I'll just rearrange this, and they're all done by me here, but we can see all of the submits, all of the commits that we've had so far. And now we can see, oops, I don't have this running right now. Let me go back and set this up. Actually, I have to do that on port 3001, so let me try that again. -p 3001, background it. And now, okay, now it's running. So let's add a header to this page in our new testing branch. So we go to our show page, and we'll just set up a little header here, a note, and we can see that we now have a header on this page, and this is in our testing branch. Now at this point, let's say that, so now we're still in our testing branch here. So at this point, let's say that somebody comes in and they say, we need to have a new change to production, and we've already done a whole bunch of work here. What we can do is commit this branch, and we can switch back to our master branch. So actually, let's take a look at this. So now we have a change, and our testing branch has gone forward, and our master branch is still equal with where the Git server branch is. So what's in production here. So now we can switch to our master branch, just do git checkout master, and we can see now that we're on our master branch. And if we go back to the show page, we can see that the header's disappeared. It's not there anymore because we're back on our master branch. This is now the same as what's running in production. And let's say that the change that they want in production is that they want a wording change on the list page. I want to say all my notes instead of my notes. So I can run a git status and see that that is the page that is changed, and I can commit that to our master branch. And we can commit this, and we can now see that we've diverged. So our master branch has gone forward, and our testing branch has gone forward, and they diverged at the point of where we are in production. And then if I push this master branch to the Git server, we can see that the Git server ref master branch moves up to where our master branch is, but our testing branch is still back with our old change in it and not with this change in it yet. And so I can run cat deploy, and I can deploy this out to production. So all I've done is I've gone back to what the production looked like, made a change, pushed it out, and now I can see that locally I'm now running the new master branch, and here I'm running our new master branch with the change in it. And now I want to go back to what I was doing before. So if I run git checkout testing, I can see that now I'm back, and the show page has the old header on it, the testing header on it, and now I'm back on the testing branch. So now let's add a subheader to the list page. Instead of all my notes, you can see now it says my notes, just like it did before when we merged. Or I'm sorry, when we branched off of where production was. And I can go back and I can see that I now have a subheader. But in production, I have the change that they had me push out. But I don't have that change in here now. So let's say that I'm happy with these changes. And what I want to do is I want to commit this to my testing branch here. And you can add the message on the command line if you'd like to. And we'll see that the testing branches move forward, the master branch is merged off, and the Git server, what's in production, is equal with where my master branch is right now. So we can see I'm still in the testing branch. So now I'm going to switch back to the master branch. I'm going to pull in my changes from the testing branch. It's time to push this into production. So do git pull dot testing, which technically does a fetch and then a merge, but you can do just git merge if you'd like to. But I can see that I've had a conflict. And so I can see the conflict of what the subheader that I did and what I just put into the master branch for the push out, and I can merge them together. And then I'll run a git add on that file. And we're good, and I can commit, and we can see that we merged in the testing branch and that I had to resolve a conflict in one of the files. Actually, I'll just put that in the notes here. And now, if we go back to git k, we can see that our server is still back where the old master branch was, but I've merged in the new testing branch, and now my master branch is the newest and greatest. So now I can push this to our Git server, and we can see the Git server ref move up to the new master branch. So now everything's cool. And I can deploy this. And there you go. Now the web server is up to date with our hotfix and our testing branch changes. Now we don't need this testing branch anymore, so we can go ahead and get rid of it. If you do git branch -d and then the name of the branch, it'll delete the branch, and we can see that that branch is gone now. And if we go back to git k, our changes are still there, and but the branch name is gone. We don't need it anymore. So now I'm going to show you an alternate deployment method for Git in Capistrano. If we look at our deploy.rb, actually let's do this in TextMate. If we look at our deploy.rb file, you can see that we did deploy via remote cache, but maybe our web server doesn't have access to our Git repository, which is often the case. So we want to do deploy via copy. So we'll change this deploy via to copy, and that will tar it up locally and SCP it over. And we also want to do git shallow clone, because what git shallow clone will do is make it act a little bit more like a subversion checkout, where it just gets the latest change, rather than cloning the entire repository, which can get quite large. You can't do fetches anymore out of shallow clones, but we don't need to, because all we're going to do is check it out, tar it up, and move it over. So let's make a change to our show code here and deploy this via deploy via copy and git shallow clone. Again, git shallow clone isn't necessary, it just makes it a lot faster if you have a large repository. So commit that, and we'll push this out to our Git server, and then we'll go ahead and run a cap deploy. And we can see in this cap deploy that what it's doing is doing a checkout locally, initializing a Git repository in one of our temp directories, tarring it up, and SCPing it over. You can see the tarball here, and uploading it to web server temp directory as a tarball, and it's just going to go ahead and untar it on the servers. So the server itself doesn't have to have any access to the Git server. And now it's done, and you can see that the changes took here. So that's how you do it if your production servers do not have access to your Git server. And actually that works with Subversion or anything else as well. And you can do it without shallow clone if you'd like to as well. So that is how you use Git in Capistrano, and how you can use Git and GitK to manage your Rails app. And here you can see that because I just changed that file and I didn't commit it, that we have local and committed changes. So I'll just commit that in real fast. Not shallow cloning. And that is it. So that's been using Git to manage and deploy your Rails with the new Capistrano 2.1, and you can find more information here at my website. And if you want to learn a lot more about Git or Capistrano, you can also use Jeffrey Grosenbach's excellent peep code screencasts, which go into a lot more detail on both Git and Capistrano. This has been Scott Chacon. Thank you very much.